My beloved child, 5 minutes ago, your soulmate may have made a decision that changes the direction of their life, because they picked up the phone, contacted a lawyer, and finally decided they could no longer keep pretending that everything was okay. But here is the part you need to understand: this may not be about what you think they are getting divorced from. The word divorce can sound like the end of a marriage, but sometimes the deeper separation is from a life that no longer feels honest, a situation they have outgrown, or a version of themselves they have been trapped inside for far too long. And there may be one person at the center of this decision that your soulmate has not told anyone about: you. Don't skip this message, because the reason behind that phone call may reveal why your soulmate has been distant, emotionally exhausted, and unusually quiet lately. Imagine your soulmate sitting somewhere alone, staring at their phone before making the call. Their hand may have been shaking slightly. They may have typed the lawyer's number, deleted it, typed it again, and then finally pressed call. The conversation may have started with a simple question: "Can we talk about my situation?" But underneath those words was months, perhaps years, of frustration, disappointment, hesitation, and emotional exhaustion. They may have listened carefully while the lawyer explained the next steps. Documents, questions, timelines, decisions. Things that suddenly made the situation feel real. Your soulmate may have looked around the room afterward and realized how quiet everything had become. The person they once promised to build a life with may have been somewhere nearby, completely unaware that a major conversation had just happened. And that silence may have felt heavier than any argument. Because your soulmate may not have made this decision during a moment of anger. They may have reached this point after a long period of thinking. Late nights, difficult conversations, apologies that never changed anything, promises that sounded good but eventually became empty. Maybe they tried to save the relationship. Maybe they stayed because of family expectations. Maybe they stayed because starting over felt terrifying. Maybe they stayed because they were afraid of hurting someone. But there comes a moment when a person realizes that staying somewhere simply because they are afraid to leave is not the same thing as being happy. And your soulmate may have reached that moment. But that wasn't the part that changed everything. The real turning point may have happened when someone asked them one simple question: if you could choose your life again, would you choose this? Your soulmate may have gone completely silent. Because the answer was not easy. They may have spent months avoiding that exact question. They may have told themselves that things would improve. They may have convinced themselves that the past should be enough reason to stay. They may have thought about all the memories they shared with their spouse. The first time they met. The first trip together. The promises. The family gatherings. The photographs. The moments that once felt permanent. And yet, somewhere along the way, something changed. The laughter became less frequent. Conversations became shorter. Affection became routine. Arguments became predictable. They could sit in the same room and still feel completely alone. Your soulmate may have started wondering when they stopped feeling like themselves. And then there was you. Maybe your soulmate never told their spouse everything about you. Maybe they never even admitted to themselves how deeply they still cared. But your presence in their thoughts may have become impossible to ignore. A memory of your voice could appear during an ordinary morning. A place you once mentioned could suddenly remind them of you. A song could bring back an entire conversation. And perhaps the most painful part was realizing that they were comparing the emotional connection they once felt with you to the life they were currently living. That comparison may have frightened them, because it forced them to ask whether they had been living according to their heart or simply according to expectations. Your soulmate may have tried to push those thoughts away. They may have told themselves, it was just the past. But then something happened. They saw your name again. Maybe it appeared in an old conversation. Maybe someone mentioned you. Maybe they found a photograph they had never deleted. And suddenly, all those feelings they thought were gone came rushing back. Not because the past magically returned, but because unfinished emotions have a way of resurfacing when people finally become honest with themselves. Your soulmate may have stared at that memory for several minutes. Then they closed the phone and whispered, I should have handled this differently. That sentence may reveal more than they realize. Because regret often appears when someone finally understands that their silence had consequences. Maybe they believed you had moved on. Maybe they assumed you no longer cared. Maybe they thought contacting you would only reopen old wounds. So they stayed away. And while they stayed away, their own life continued moving forward without their heart fully being present. This is where the lawyer enters the story. Your soulmate may not have hired a lawyer simply because they suddenly wanted a divorce. They may have done it because they needed clarity. They needed to understand what separating their life from their spouse would actually mean. They needed to know what was possible before making an emotional decision. And that distinction matters. Because talking to a lawyer does not automatically mean a divorce is finalized. It means someone is seriously considering their options. It means they are asking questions they may have been too afraid to ask before. It means the private thoughts they carried for months have finally reached a point where action feels necessary. Your soulmate may have left that conversation feeling both relieved and terrified. Relieved because they had finally taken one step toward honesty. Terrified because every step after that could change everything. They may have sat in their car afterward, looking through the windshield without turning on the engine. Their phone may have been in their lap. Your name may have been on their mind. And for the first time, they may have wondered, if I become free from this situation, would they still want me? That question could be the one thing holding them back. Because your soulmate may not fear leaving their current relationship as much as they fear discovering that you no longer feel the same way. Think about that. They may be brave enough to confront their marriage, but still afraid to confront your heart. They may be willing to change their entire life, yet terrified of hearing you say, "It's too late." And that fear may explain why they have not contacted you yet. They may want certainty before taking the emotional risk. But certainty is exactly what they cannot have. The woman or man they are separating from may also sense that something has changed. Perhaps they noticed your soulmate becoming distant. Perhaps they asked, "Is there someone else?" And your soulmate may have struggled to answer. Maybe they said, "This isn't about another person." But even if that statement was technically true, your presence may still have influenced how they understood their own unhappiness. You may represent something they lost in themselves. A time when they felt seen. A connection where they could speak without pretending. A version of themselves that felt alive. And that realization can be powerful. But it can also be confusing. Your soulmate may not want to leave one relationship simply to run into another. They may know they need to face their own choices first. They may need to close one chapter honestly before asking you to open another. That is why this story may be moving slowly. There may be legal conversations, family conversations, difficult questions, and emotional boundaries that need to be handled carefully. But beneath all of that is a much simpler question: what kind of life does your soulmate actually want? They may have spent years trying to make other people comfortable. Now they are asking whether they can finally be honest with themselves. And that question may have started with the lawyer call 5 minutes ago. But there is another detail you need to hear. The lawyer may have asked your soulmate whether they had someone they could trust during the transition. Your soulmate may have thought about several people: family, friends, coworkers. But one name may have appeared immediately in their mind: yours. And they may have pushed the thought away because they were not ready to admit what it meant. The lawyer may have noticed the hesitation and asked, "Is there someone you need to talk to before you make this decision?" Your soulmate may have answered, "There is someone." Then silence. Do they know how you feel? Another pause. No, that answer may have been painful to say. Because it means your soulmate has been carrying an entire emotional story that you may know nothing about. They may have wanted to contact you countless times. They may have opened your conversation, typed a message, and deleted it. Can we talk? Delete. I need to tell you something. Delete. I never stopped caring. Delete. Every time fear won. But today, something may have changed. Maybe the lawyer. Conversation made them realize that waiting forever is also a decision. Maybe they finally understood that if they want a different life, they cannot keep hiding behind silence. So they may have opened your contact again. Their finger may have hovered over your name. They may have started typing. And then they stopped. Because at that exact moment, another message arrived. Not from you. From someone connected to their past. The message contained information your soulmate never expected to see. It mentioned the marriage. It mentioned you. And it suggested that someone knew about the feelings your soulmate had been hiding. Your soulmate read the message twice. Then they looked at the date. The message had been sent months earlier. Before the lawyer. Before the arguments became unbearable. Before they admitted to themselves that they wanted a different life. Suddenly, they realized someone may have known the truth long before they were ready to face it. They may have asked themselves, who else knows? And then came the most unsettling possibility. What if the person who sent that message had already spoken to you? What if you had heard a version of the story that your soulmate never knew about? What if you were also waiting for an explanation? Your soulmate may have felt their heart race. They may have called the person immediately. No answer. They tried again. Still nothing. Then a short message appeared, you need to hear the rest before you contact them. Your soulmate stared at those words. The rest? What rest? What had been left out? They may have felt frustrated, but they knew they could not ignore it. Because the truth they were looking for might explain not only why their marriage had fallen apart, but why their connection with you had never truly disappeared. Stay until the end, because this is where the story moves from confusion into revelation. If this message speaks to your heart, take a moment to like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment with one word about what you believe your soulmate is afraid to say. But don't leave yet. Your soulmate may be standing at the edge of the biggest emotional decision they have made in years. They have spoken to the lawyer. They have confronted the possibility of divorce. They have admitted that their current life no longer feels right. And now they are holding a message that may reveal what happened between you and them when neither of you knew the complete truth. But just as your soulmate finally decides to open the message, another notification appears. This one contains a name they recognize immediately. A name they never expected to see connected to their marriage. Their hands go completely still. Because the message begins with 5 words that change everything. You were never told why, and your soulmate realizes that the divorce may only be the beginning of the Truth they are about to uncover. My beloved child, the message began with 5 words your soulmate never expected to read. You were never told why, and suddenly, the divorce, the silence, the distance, and even the feelings they tried to bury began to look completely different. Your soulmate stared at the screen, afraid to scroll any further, because somewhere inside they already knew that whatever came next could force them to question everything they believed about the past. Don't skip this moment, because the truth they are about to discover may explain why they walked away from you, why they stayed in a relationship that no longer felt right, and why they finally decided to contact a lawyer. The message continued, you were never told why they left you. Your soulmate stopped breathing for a second. They read it again. Why they left you. Their mind immediately went back to that painful time when you and they stopped talking. They remembered the confusion in your voice. They remembered the questions they never answered. They remembered the look on your face when they chose distance instead of honesty. For a long time, your soulmate may have believed they were the only one carrying regret. But now they were beginning to wonder if there had been another side to the story. They typed, "What are you talking about?" The person on the other end took several minutes to respond. Then another message appeared. You need to understand that your soulmate did not leave because they stopped caring. Your soulmate stared at the words. Their hands became cold. Because suddenly, the story they had repeated to themselves for months began falling apart. Maybe they had believed that you rejected them. Maybe someone told them you had moved on. Maybe a misunderstanding convinced them that continuing the connection would only cause pain. But what if the information they received back then was incomplete? What if someone had made a decision on their behalf? What if the distance between you and your soulmate had been built on assumptions instead of truth? Your soulmate may have leaned back in their chair and closed their eyes. One memory came rushing forward. A conversation from long ago. Someone had told them, you need to let this person go. At the time, they may have believed it was advice. They may have thought that person was protecting them. But now, they were wondering whether there had been another reason. The message arrived again. There was a conversation you never heard. Your soulmate immediately replied, between who? The response took longer this time. Then came a name. A name connected to their marriage. Their stomach tightened. Suddenly, the lawyer call made more sense. Maybe the decision to separate was not created in one afternoon. Maybe it had been building for a long time, through small betrayals of trust, uncomfortable conversations, emotional distance, and a growing realization that the life they were living was not the life they truly wanted. But this new information suggested there was something deeper. Your soulmate may have discovered that the person they trusted had known about you. They may have known about the connection. They may have known that your soulmate never completely stopped caring. And perhaps they used that knowledge to create fear. Your soulmate may have remembered certain arguments that suddenly sounded different. Why do you keep bringing them up? Why do you still have that old message? Why haven't you deleted those pictures? At the time, your soulmate may have thought those questions were simply signs of insecurity. But now they were asking themselves something else. How did they know? Maybe your soulmate never realized how much someone else had noticed. Maybe every time they became quiet after hearing your name, someone was watching. Maybe every time they opened an old conversation, someone noticed. Maybe the emotional distance in their marriage grew because their spouse could sense there was a part of your soulmate's heart that had never fully left the past. And that realization could explain why the relationship became so difficult. But your soulmate was not celebrating. They were grieving. Because learning that something may have been misunderstood does not erase the years that were lost. It does not bring back conversations. It does not undo painful decisions. It only makes a person wonder what might have happened if they had known the truth sooner. Your soulmate may have whispered, "Why didn't anyone tell me?" And that question may have been followed by another message. Because they were afraid of what you would do. Your soulmate stared at the screen. What would I do? The answer came quickly. You would have gone back. Back to you. Those 3 words may have shaken your soulmate more than anything else. Because perhaps that was exactly what they had feared admitting. They never completely moved on. They simply learned how to live with the absence. They filled their days with work. They built routines. They made commitments. They tried to become the person everyone expected them to be. But underneath all of that, there may have been one unfinished conversation. One person they still wondered about. One question they never stopped asking themselves. What if? And now, after years of silence, that question was standing in front of them again. Your soulmate may have looked at the lawyer's information on the table. Then they looked at your name on their phone. 2 different futures seemed to exist in front of them. One was familiar but emotionally empty. The other was uncertain but honest. And they knew they could not make a decision about their marriage simply because they still had feelings for you. They had to decide what was right for their own life first. That realization mattered. Because your soulmate may not want to leave one relationship simply to escape into another. They may want to close the chapter they are in with honesty and respect. They may want to understand themselves before asking you to understand them. And perhaps that is why the lawyer was contacted. Not because everything is suddenly finished. Not because a divorce is guaranteed. But because your soulmate finally wants to know what their options are and what the next step would actually look like. That distinction is important. The phone call may have been the first serious action after months of emotional hesitation. But then the person messaging them revealed another detail. There is something else you need to know. Your soulmate replied, "Tell me." The response was simple. They were waiting for you. Your soulmate's heart dropped. They immediately thought of you. But before they could respond, another message appeared. Not anymore. Silence. Your soulmate stared at those two words. Not anymore. What did that mean? Had you moved on? Had you stopped waiting? Had someone else entered your life? Or had you simply decided that you could not spend another year wondering whether your soulmate would ever return? Your soulmate may have felt a wave of regret. Because sometimes people realize how valuable something was only after they have allowed too much time to pass. They may have remembered every opportunity they ignored, every call they did not make, every message they deleted, every moment they told themselves, maybe tomorrow. And tomorrow became months. Months became years. Now they were finally ready to speak, but they did not know whether you would still want to listen. That uncertainty may have been more frightening than the divorce itself. Your soulmate may have asked the person sending the messages, "Have they said anything about me?" The response came after a long pause. Yes. Their heart raced. What did they say? Another pause. Then they said they still wonder why you left. Your soulmate may have covered their face with their hands, because that sentence revealed something painful. You had been carrying your own version of the story. You may have thought they abandoned you. They may have thought you rejected them. Both of you may have been hurting while believing the other person had already moved on. And somewhere in the middle was a truth neither of you knew. The person messaging your soulmate then sent a final piece of evidence. A screenshot. Your soulmate opened it. Their eyes immediately focused on the words. It was a conversation from the past. Your name was there. Their name was there. And someone had written something that your soulmate had never seen before. They never told you because they thought they were protecting you. Your soulmate's heart sank. Protecting you from what? The answer was not included. Instead, another message appeared. You need to ask the person who knows what happened that night. Your soulmate froze. What night? There were so many memories. So many moments. But one night immediately came back to them. The night everything changed between you. The night after which your soulmate became distant. The night they stopped explaining themselves. The night they decided to accept a life they were not sure they wanted. They remembered being told something that changed their decision. Something that made them believe they had no choice. But now they were beginning to wonder whether that information had been true. Your soulmate may have stood up and walked across the room. They needed air. They needed to think. The lawyer's card was still on the table. Your name was still on the phone. And now there was a new question in their mind. Who was there that night? They started going through old messages, old photographs, old conversations. They searched for names they had not thought about in years. Then they found one. Someone who had been there. Someone who knew both of you. Someone who had never explained what they saw. Your soulmate immediately called. The phone rang once. Twice. 3 times. Then the call was answered. I knew you would eventually ask, the person said. Your soulmate became completely still. Ask what? The voice on the other end was quiet. About them. Your soulmate swallowed. What happened? There was a long pause. Then the person said, you were given the wrong story. Your soulmate's eyes filled with tears. What do you mean? The answer was almost a whisper. They did not leave you. They were pushed away from you. Suddenly, everything became silent. Your soulmate sat down. The words felt impossible. Who pushed them away? The person refused to answer immediately. Instead, they said, before I tell you, you need to understand something. The person you're divorcing may not be the only person. Who knows what happened? Your soulmate looked toward the lawyer's documents. Their entire life suddenly felt like a puzzle with pieces missing. The person continued, and there is something else. Your soulmate tried to contact you once. Your soulmate froze. When? The night you thought they had forgotten you. Their eyes widened. Why didn't I know? The answer came softly. Because the message never reached you. Your soulmate could barely speak. What happened to it? Silence. Then the person said, someone stopped it. Those words changed the entire meaning of the past. Your soulmate may have realized that the silence between you was never as simple as they believed. Maybe you were both waiting. Maybe both of you were hurt. Maybe both of you thought the other had chosen to walk away. And now, after all this time, your soulmate had finally found the possibility that someone else had influenced the story. But there was still one question they needed answered. Why? Why would anyone want to keep you and your soulmate apart? What did they gain from it? And why was this information coming out now, just when your soulmate had contacted a lawyer? Your soulmate looked at the clock. Only a short time had passed since the lawyer call. Yet it felt like their entire life had changed. They opened your contact again. This time, they did not type immediately. They simply stared at your name. Then they whispered, "I'm sorry." Not because they knew how you would respond. Not because they were certain you would come back. But because they finally understood that there were things they should have asked years ago. And just as they finally began typing, their phone rang. It was the person who had just revealed the hidden truth. Your soulmate answered. The voice on the other end sounded different now. More serious. "Don't send that message yet." Your soulmate asked, "Why?" The answer came slowly. "Because there is one more thing you need to know about your marriage before you contact them." Your soulmate's hand froze above the screen. "What thing?" The person took a deep breath. "The reason your spouse has been fighting so hard to keep this marriage together may have nothing to do with love." Your soulmate stopped moving. The room became completely silent. Then came the sentence that made their heart drop. "They know what happened between you and your soulmate, and they have been hiding something of their own." Stay with this story, because that is where the next truth begins. If this message resonates with you, like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment with one word that describes what you would do if you discovered that the story you believed for years was never the complete truth. Because your soulmate is no longer simply deciding whether to leave a marriage. They are about to discover why that marriage became connected to the one person they never truly stopped caring about. And when they finally learn what their spouse has been hiding, the decision they made 5 minutes ago may suddenly carry an entirely different meaning.